Hey guys, here's a really good video that I think you will enjoy. I have a 2014 Ford Mustang and I noticed that it had been leaking oil for several months. I wasn't changing out the gaskets. I was just changing the oil. And so it got to the point where the next oil change came up and I said, you know what? Let's take care of those gaskets already and let's change them out. So it turns out that the timing gasket on the front of the engine had the biggest leak, and it was a lot more than I had expected. But I knew it was leaking for several months, but it was a lot. And after inspection, it turns out that the rear main gasket, which is the gasket that connects the motor with the transmission, also had a smaller leak. And so I said, you know what? Let's change out the gaskets. And they were going to change out the gaskets, almost all of them except for the oil pan gasket. That one was not leaking. It is still the older gasket, but it's not leaking, and I didn't want to make the extra expense of it's an extra $500 just to change the oil pan gasket. I said, you know what? No, I don't want to. I'm already spending $1,500 for changing out all the gaskets in the motor and the transmission, the rear main. I don't want to have an extra expense to change one more gasket. Just, I was trying to save some money, right? It's not leaking, so I shouldn't have to change it. And so they changed out the gaskets. They got it done within I would say 24-hour period. They took all day to change it out, drop the transmission. They changed out the leaking gaskets, almost all the gaskets except for the oil pan, right? A few days later, I actually a couple 2 days later, I decided to wash the engine, clean out the engine. I inspected everything. Of course, I inspected the car and the what I could, right, from the top of the motor. I noticed that they did change the gaskets. I couldn't get under the car because it's a Mustang. It's kind of low and you can't really see that. But after inspection, I noticed a few bolts were missing. Some clips were broken. Those clips wear and tear and they break. So I was like, you know what? That's a missing bolt there. There's another missing bolt there. I don't think that's right. I think they forgot to put it on. And they broke the clips. And so I want to get that replaced, right? So I took the car back in and I wrote an email and I let them know, hey, these clips are broken and I believe there's missing bolts. Like bolts go there. And I said, and I also want to inspect the transmission, the rear main gasket, lift it up because I want to see if there's anything missing there. Well, to my surprise, there was a large oil leak on the rear main gasket. And if you're not sure what the rear main gasket is on a car, that's the largest gasket on the car. They have to drop the transmission to put that gasket. So it was leaking right there and a whole lot more than it was originally leaking. I'm like, what is going on there? So it was leaking a lot. So let me go back a little bit. When they did the inspection and they were changing out the gasket, the guy, the mechanic in the front did mention, hey, Isaac, we're changing out all the main gaskets. We should change out the oil pan gasket while we're at it. And that way all the gaskets are replaced. He did mention it to me. And I said, no, I don't want to make the extra expense. I don't want to change that rear main, that oil pan gasket. So I just got the phone call right now and they replaced that rear main gasket, of course, the transmission gasket. But then they said that wasn't the leak. It turns out that the leak was coming from the oil pan. The oil pan gasket was chipped and it was broken and it completely came off. How does that happen? How does it happen if it wasn't leaking and it wasn't in the way of changing out the rear main gasket, how did the oil pan gasket break? So that's the big question, right? They did recommend that they change out that gasket in the beginning, and I said no because it's not leaking. And he says, correct, it's not leaking. It could cause some pressure because it is an older gasket, and it could give you some trouble along the way. And I'm like, okay, but it's not leaking. He got, yeah, it should be fine. It's not leaking. So how could it leak immediately after they change all the other gaskets? It doesn't make sense, right? Like, you know how you've heard rumors and how mechanics, they want you to keep returning and bringing your car back for more repairs by, damaging other things. That's the concept. That's the belief. That's the belief system I have. I've experienced those things with mechanics. And so I don't understand how that oil pan gasket broke. How could it completely fall apart? How did it get chipped? He said the oil pan gasket is chipped. So we went ahead and replaced it. They are replacing everything under warranty. So the warranty covered all the replacement of all the gaskets. If they all needed to be replaced, there is a 2-year warranty, parts and labor, on the job that I paid for at Hacienda Ford in Edinburg. It's the quick lane, actually. The new one on Canton and Jackson. So, I mean, that's fine. But of course, we don't want to rely on the warranty, right? We want the job to get done right the first time. So that's just my concern on how the oil pan gasket got chipped and how it broke if there was nothing wrong with it. Did the mechanics try to break it off and replace it and then realize, oh, Isaac's not requesting that one, and so, oh, we're just going to put it back? You don't know, right? You can only assume. But it bothers me. It bothers me that seal was broken when there was no leak. Was I warned? Yes, I was warned that I could have a potential leak over time, but not immediately, right? Like, not immediately. So those are my thoughts. I don't know. But the bottom line is, if you get mechanic work done on your car, regardless of how small it is, and even for the big jobs, inspect the work. Inspect the work. I'm just one guy who decided just to inspect the car, inspect the motor after the job was done. Imagine the people who just drive away and don't inspect the oil change, or don't inspect the tires or the tire pressure or the windshield fluid that was replaced. And you're paying for this when you go get an oil change. They top off all fluids. You're paying for it. Why not check to see if it was done? Especially tire pressure. Tire pressure that's so important. A lot of people, you don't watch them 24/7. You should be inspecting. So you as a customer paying for these services should be inspecting the work when you get oil changes done or anything done on your car, whether it's a tire rotation or adding tire pressure. You should have a gauge in your car to check the tire pressure, right? Don't just rely on the warnings that the car gives you that you have low tire pressure. You should have a gauge in your car. And so that's the bottom line here. That's my message to you. Inspect the work. Inspect any work that is done on your car, because if not, you're going to regret it. And you're paying for it at the end. It's your money. Don't take things for granted. All right, that's my message for you guys. This is a review on Hacienda Ford Quick Lane on Canton and Jackson. But thank God they took care of everything. They replaced the gasket that I would have paid $500 for. They replaced it. So that's really nice. I appreciate that. So that saved me $500. And so I'm not mad. I'm not upset that I had an oil leak after the job was performed. I'm not upset that that there was missing bolt, because my due diligence of inspecting the work just paid itself off in the long run. So, all right, guys, have a good one.